That picture took me a long time to draw because I'm not the best artist. Well, I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com, back for another video. I am the English Fluency Guide, and in this video, I want to talk about reading, which is actually a fantastic way to improve your fluency, and you can do this all by yourself. So let's see if chat is working. First of all, if you are able to see this, let me know. Post something in chat, let me know where you are, and we should be ready to roll. Let's see here. I think, all right. So hopefully this is working. People should be coming in. I want to get started. This actually should not be that long of a video. All right, Shark is back. Nice to see you there. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Hopefully you guys are all enjoying your day or your evening or wherever. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about reading, and one of the things I often tell students is that they really can become more fluent, confident English speakers, even if they have no way or no one really to practice with. So the practicing actually comes from getting lots of input, and so in this video, I want to talk about how you can do this with reading. A lot of people ask me what books they should read or whatever, so I want to talk about that and actually show some examples. I brought some with me. Yes, actually some visual aids so I can show you what these look like. But the most important thing to understand is that there really are two different ways of learning. There is the way natives learn, and then there is the way that most people learn really any language. So most people are learning a second language, or what they call a second language, usually through their first language. So they're trying to learn through translations, studying grammar rules, that kind of thing. But I want to show you some examples that are really what I talk about often in lessons, which is how to learn like a native speaker. And again, you can do this by yourself. So it looks like people are coming through. If you do have questions as we go through this, let me know and I can answer any of those. But if it's anything about reading specifically, save that for the end of the video because I want to go through these and give a bunch of examples, and I will need your help for those. So hopefully you will find this entertaining. But just a quick hello for the people who are with us so far. Nice to see everybody joining us. We got a ding. Hello, teacher. I'm from Cambodia in Southeast Asia. Yes, Jacinta, nice to see you there. And from Sudan, Ren from Nihon Kana. June from China. Look at that. We got people all over the place. Vititi from Cuba and Wadson from Haiti. All right. Well, looks like that's enough people to get started. Should be an entertaining video. All right. So before we talk about the native content, I want to just give an example of the kind of non-native stuff that people usually learn with. I don't actually have an example of that because you've probably seen this already, but typically this is just an English textbook. And usually what you find in an English textbook, you will have like some English vocabulary, maybe it will explain some grammar, something like that, and then it will often have translations in your native language. So I am in Japan, and this is the typical thing you find. You've got the Japanese text under there explaining what everything means, and it's really making it difficult for you to understand. So if you can get a translation of something, you will think about translations when you speak. And this is why it's important not to learn this way if you want to become a fluent speaker. If you just want to pass tests, it's okay just to learn a bunch of translations that you don't care about because you just need to say that information or write it down on a test. But if you actually want to communicate fluently, the whole idea of fluency is that we're not thinking about what we want to say and translating and hesitating and worrying if we're using the right word or something like that. All right, so this is the example of an English textbook. So again, we've got often some very basic things. We're talking about vocabulary. We're going to explain something very quickly, and then usually on the next page is a completely different lesson. Okay, so we've got one lesson here, and then often it's like on the next page you will find a completely different lesson. So there's very little review. So people forget what they learn in this lesson, they go to the next lesson, and then they forget that lesson. Okay, if you were familiar with this, this is basically how everybody learns any language, and this is why so few people become fluent speakers the traditional way. All right, so let's get right into the native content. This might be surprising for people. Maybe they're thinking I'm going to pull out some Shakespeare or something like that, something very amazing, but I really want to show you how simple and easy this is, and so I actually have some books for children. All right, pretty amazing stuff over here. So let's go through these. So the first one, this is an example of something. This is the first book I read to both of my children when they were just born. So they couldn't even understand or hear anything. It's a book called Goodnight Moon. This might even be the second copy of it that we have. And so we've got, there's still tape on here because we've read this so many times. But I want to, and I know people might think, oh, like children's books, like maybe that's all too simple or too easy or something. But I do see so many people making basic mistakes with English because they don't learn like natives, they don't learn real English, and they don't get naturally varied review. So I want to show you how these examples of children's books, these are things that you can use, and these are things, actually, I do the same thing when learning Japanese. So once I discovered I should be learning like a native, one of the first things I did was get books for Japanese kids because I wanted to understand the language the same way they were learning. So let me show you exactly what's happening with this. Now, in a book like Goodnight Moon, if you have not seen this before, one of the things you will find in children's books is lots of naturally varied review. This means they're going to take an idea and repeat that idea in slightly different ways again and again and again. Okay, so remember the textbook example, we've got one example of something, maybe we teach some vocabulary or grammar, that's what the lesson is about, and then that's it. Then you move on to the next lesson after that. But this whole book is about one idea, the greeting of saying good night. All right, and so what we don't do in this, we don't do like a bunch of different examples about different greetings. We're not focusing on good morning or good afternoon. We can see from the context in the book, we've got stars in the background here, so out through the window here. Kids can look at this and they recognize what's happening. So without a parent even explaining to them, look, we've got a little, like a rabbit child getting into bed. All right, so we've got a child in bed, we've got some stars out there, and then we know the book, you know, the children have probably heard that word many times. Good night, moon. Good night, moon. All right, so we're going through just introducing a few of the different things, and then usually parents are touching things or asking kids to find where they are. So in the great green room, there was a telephone. So this is like an old school telephone, an old telephone right there. A telephone and a red balloon and a picture of, so there are actually two different pictures in here, but this one, a cow jumping over the moon. Now, I'm not going to read the whole book for you, but the point is you can look through these different pages and you see, oh, that's interesting. We're looking at different parts in the room. We're not going from different rooms in the house. We're just really focusing on one place, okay? So we're looking at all these different things. You're teaching some vocabulary here. So we're saying goodnight, and we're talking about the different things in the room, like we've got two little kittens and a pair of mittens. So here you're learning about pairs, like you might have a pair of socks or a pair of mittens or a pair of kittens. So two things that go together in that way. And then we've got some other things like a bowl full of mush. It's kind of like oatmeal, and a quiet old lady who is whispering hush. So we introduce all of these different characters, and then we go back through it again. Okay, we go back through this again. Good night, room. Good night, room. So you're just teaching kids to say good night to all the different things in this room. Good night, room. Good night, red balloon. Good night, light. Good night, kittens. Good night, mittens. Good night, clocks. And good night, socks. So you hear a little bit of that rhyme as well. Okay, so this is just one example of this. Again, the point is not to take one thing like the word good night and then just repeat it again and again and again. We want to hear it in slightly different situations in slightly different ways, and this is a great book for introducing that. So of course people can learn good night. They also learn good morning, good afternoon, but this is how they learn greetings. So they're learning this by understanding the situation and then practicing that in different ways, even just by hearing that. So even without speaking, you can improve just by reading, even reading to yourself. So it's a very simple process. Go on to another slightly higher book. Yeah, so mini book. But this is the Berenstain Bears. This is a cartoon actually I watched when I was a little kid. There's an interesting controversy about this. A lot of people think it's Berenstain Bears. So people think it's like Berenstain, but it's Actually, Berenstain Bears. But I want to show you just how simple this is. And again, it's the basic idea of taking a theme or an idea and helping you understand something like a native. So this means we're not trying to translate. There's no Japanese or Thai or anything else in this book. It's just helping you understand the words, but also giving you the context so you can really understand things. And then we practice it again and again and again. All right, so let me give you some examples. So very simple book, Big Bear, Small Bear. Big Bear, Small Bear. So this is a kind of level one just for reading practice. It's a little bit different for actually teaching reading. So like the level of Big Bear or Small Bear, these are different levels of difficulty for the words themselves, but kids actually know a lot of the vocabulary. So even if they can't read it by themselves, this is the kind of thing they would practice with their parents. So we have very simple, look at this, Big Bear, Small Bear. And so this is the exact same thing I'm doing in the classroom if I'm teaching young kids. I'm just saying, look, Big Bear, Small Bear. And the brain automatically recognizes, okay, like what's the same and what's different about these? So looks like that one's big and that one's small. And after we get a bunch of different examples with that, we really get a good example or a good understanding of what these things mean. So we've got Big Bear over here, Small Bear. And now we're going to look at Small Hat, Big Bear. Small Bear, Big Hat. Pretty easy, right? So Big Hat or Small Hat, Big Bear, and Small Bear, Big Hat. Or too small, too big. So when kids are learning this, they're not trying to think about what the grammatical terms for things are. They're like, wait a minute, what tense is that in? They're not thinking about any of that at all. They're just looking at the situation and understanding, oh, that one it's not just small or big, it's too small or too big. So this one is, well, that's way too small. That can't fit on his head properly. And this one is way too big, it's too big. Now they switch the hats, and then the kids learn another expression that just means like, that's perfect. Just right, just right. All right, so this is another thing that kids learn. It's like, ooh, that's perfect. It's just a perfect fit. All right, I'll give you one more example. So they go again. They're going to get some swimsuits over here. And the Big Bear says, one big, one small. So this is the kind of thing like kids are also learning like, okay, when I'm ordering something at a restaurant, I do that. Okay, so when you're trying to get somebody's attention, all these little things that kids are learning without, parents even spending any time doing that. It's just seeing the context of this, and in this situation, what do people say? Okay, so if I go, oh, excuse me, please, one big, one small. So we need one big suit and one small suit. Oh no, you can imagine what's going to happen next. And this is, again, the point of naturally varied review. The point is to learn the patterns of things, and as kids see these again and again, they really feel confident using them because they know what's going to happen next. All right, they can guess, and that's why they feel more confident. That's how you get naturally varied review rather than just repetition where we're repeating the same thing over and over. So here we have small suit, Big Bear, and big suit, Small Bear. Oh no, and now they're learning some new vocabulary. Too tight, too loose. So too tight, too loose. And then they learn that same vocabulary again, just right, just right. Now just to give you one more bit of practice with this one, this is a little bit tricky for you. One big, one small. So look at that, he's pointing to his butt over here, the same thing with the little bear. So they're pointing back here, so they're talking about the seats on the little boat over here. So Big Bear, small seat, and Small Bear, big seat. And so we can guess what's going to happen. Well, too heavy, too light, too heavy, too light. Just right, just right. All right, so even if you're reading this by yourself, most books like this, they will have a particular, it could be some language pattern like too big or too small, or we're talking about, as I'm going to show in the next book I have, like an example phrase. So these are all language patterns that you review in slightly different ways, but you understand them from the context. Hopefully that this makes sense, because this is the kind of thing where if you focus on this, you can actually look for specific books that have things where you might struggle with a particular grammar point, something like that. All right, we're going to look at one last example, and I'm going to ask for your help for this one in the comments so you can let me know if you understand the context and what's happening here. So the whole book is called I Like It When. I like it when. And it's really, it's basically like a textbook for native speakers, but you don't think about it that way. All right. So I like it when, it just means like during this time or when this thing happens, I like that thing. So it looks like there's a little hug happening here on this one. So I like it when, and then we're going to look at some different situations. I like it when you hold my hand. I like it when you hold my hand. So all these things, we're just practicing this particular phrase here. I like it when. I like it when. So I like it when you hold my hand. I like it when you hold my hand. All right, now for the next one, this one's going to be a little bit trickier. I'm going to have to try to cover this up. But let's just see. I'm going to put my hand over here. What do you think is happening in this situation? Now, this could actually be a lot of different things. I'm just covering up the I like it when part. But post in the comments, what do you think is happening here? So I like it when, what? I like it when. You can actually just use this by yourself in the same way that we might look at this. Now this again is going to be, it's a little bit vague. It's called, I like it when you help me. Good one. I like it when you help me. So the same thing. Even though you might think it's a simple idea, we could make the expression really long. Like, I like it when you take time out of your day to help me do something. So we could make an even longer sentence, but we're still using that basic pattern. So I like it when you are tidy. Yep, another good example, Sarah. Very good. So I like it when. So this one is, I like it when you let me help. Okay, so you offer help. So in this one, so like the little baby penguin, the young penguin is trying to help, and then mama says, thank you. So I like it when you let me help. Or I like it when you do housekeeping or something like that. Very good. All right. Well, here's the next one. I like it when. So what's happening in this situation? So kids are looking at this, and remember, even if they don't understand all of the vocabulary, the point is to understand what's happening. And some of these, they might be a little bit vague. Some of them are a bit more clear, obviously. So I like it when we cook. That's a good one. So I like it when we cook. I like it when we, what do you think? So again, as you go through these different examples, you can actually become more fluent and you feel a lot more confident about using these. So you can say, I like it when you do something also, or I like it when she does something. So I like it when, or if I'm talking about maybe petting my dog or something. So my dog likes it when I scratch his head or something. So my dog likes it when. And so you're learning all of these different examples. Again, this is naturally varied review. So I like it when we share food. I like it when we eat. All right, so this one is, I like it when we eat new things. So everyone had basically a good grasp of what's happening in the situation. So we've got surprise up here. We're going to try something new. I like it when we eat new things. I like it when we eat new things. Oh, what about this one? So I like it when... Now, what's happening in this one? This might be a little bit, these stories are very simple. Yeah, again, the point is not to be complex. The point is to master all these different language patterns. And so this is how natives are learning the language. The point is not to read like The Hobbit or something like that and try to understand the language, because it's going to be a long process. You're not going to get very much review, and it's going to be, again, a much more frustrating thing, especially if you don't understand the language. So I like it when you help us learn English. Well, there you go. Excellent example, Shark. Again, I like it when you scare me. This is, I like it when we play peekaboo. So if you don't know this, this is when little kids, they cover their eyes and say peekaboo, peekaboo. This might be... like in Japanese, we have the same thing as well. It's like inai nai ba, peekaboo. We probably have something similar because kids, it's almost like you disappear when you cover their eyes. Peekaboo. All right, we'll do maybe, let's see if I can find, oh, here's another one. So another situation here, I like it when, yeah, peekaboo, peekaboo, peekaboo. So I like it when we play games. So again, it would be we play games, or I like it when we play a game. Very good. I like it when you dance with me. So there are, again, different ways of saying this. I like it when we dance. I like it when you dance with me. I like it when we dance together. Okay, so as you're seeing these different examples of things, you really start to think about it more like a native. Remember that young kids, they're not spending their time speaking most of the time. Most of the time, they're just getting lots of input from their parents or teachers or TV shows or something like that. A peekaboo is an enemy in Batman. That doesn't surprise me. All right, we'll take take one more. Oh, there's another good one. I like it when what? What's happening in this one? I like it when listening to music. Yep. I don't speak Peekaboo, I can speak Spanish too. I like it when, what's happening in this one? It's the same thing I'm doing right now. Oh, I like it when you read for me. That's right. I like it when you read. I like it when we read. We read together. I like it when you read me stories. All right. But we don't use books, sentences, and real speaking time. For that will not work. I know that. I don't understand that question. Remember, each time you're learning this is how kids are learning all of these different pieces of the language. And they just start getting more complex ones over time. But what I see a lot of students, especially in conversations or when they're writing, there are lots of basic mistakes that come from people not getting enough of this. And this stuff will get you fluent automatically if you read through it. All right. So I like it when we read a book. Let's see. We'll do one more. What's happening in this scene? I like it when what? How would you describe this in English? I like it when what? All right. Remember, there are multiple ways to say things. So you might not just say like, oh, I like it when I like it when we hang out with friends. I like it when I hang out with friends. That's right. I like it when you hug me. That's right. I like it when you hug me. I like it when you give me a hug. Very good, Isaac. That's another way of saying it. So again, you notice like when parents are reading these, like often if I'm reading these to a very young child, I will give lots of those different examples. I won't just read exactly what's on the page, which is, I like it when you hug me tight. Now, this is something people did not write in the comments, but notice this is a thing that native speakers will add to like when you're hugging someone. So I like it when we cuddle. That's another good one. I like it when you uplift me. Oh, very good. All right. So like picking me up, like uplifting me, that actually can mean like to support someone, to encourage them. So I like when we hug, but hug me tight. Again, this is a native thing that a lot of people would not learn. If you're just learning the translation of this word or this situation, you might learn like hug, all right? So I like it when you hug me tight. Like you really like squeeze me tight. I like it when you hug me tight, all right? See if we have any more. Oh, this is another good one that'll teach you some native vocabulary. I like it when we what? I like it when we what? So what's happening in the situation? Again, kids are looking at this. They're seeing what happens. Okay, there's like a little baby penguin in the bathtub and mom or dad is laughing about that. So drawing illustrated with gestures. Who doesn't get it right? Yeah. Take a bath, take a shower. So it could be take a shower. We don't have like the shower head over here, but they're certainly in a bath. So have a shower, splash water. I don't know why, but I can't use book sentences in conversations. I mixed up everything I wanted to say how to solve that problem. Okay, I'm going to answer Salima's question in just a moment. This will be the last one we cover from this book, but I like it when we splash about. All right, so this is a phrasal verb, an advanced phrasal verb that most learners would not learn because they don't learn this way. They're learning more, okay, what does it mean? They might learn splash, which somebody did have, but splash about. So it means we're kind of moving around in the water, playing in the water, and splashing. You could say also splash around, okay? Everybody getting this? Splash about or splash around, all right? So just to answer Salima's point about like not being able to understand book reading or not using book quotes or phrases from books in conversations. Typically the problem is that people don't get enough review. So if you try to learn in the same kind of textbook way where you just get, like let's say this was an English textbook, so I like it when, and then you learn I like it when, and you don't review that at all, then of course the next time you try to use that in a conversation, then you will probably forget that. But kids, I mean, my kids, you can see this book is fairly worn. We have read this, I don't know how many times, 100 times, more than that maybe. Look again at Goodnight Moon, the first book we started reading, and this is maybe not even the actual first book. This might be the second copy or third copy of the book that we have, and it's got tape on it. So this is the kind of review I'm talking about. Do your books have tape on them? Do your books have tape on them? Probably not. And that's because most people will try to learn like a larger book that's going to have them, you're going to read a really long story and you will learn, you will follow the story, especially if you can understand what I'm saying right now. But you will still have trouble using those things in conversations because there's not a lot of review. All right. So Dennis, I like it when you say hello to Mexico. Yes, to Mexico. All right. It's not taking bath in a sense of the figure and another figure, in another sense. Yes. So we could have, again, it's not perfectly clear, and you could even write a different story or tell a different story. Those are just the specific words that are on the page for that, but you could make up your own thing. The point is to look at all of these different examples and how there's a general theme. So what's the best book to learn English? So hopefully you got the point of this. The best book to learn English is the best book for you, which is which problem do you need to solve. And so when you think about particular things, like let's say I wanted to learn some, I don't know, Japanese grammar point, like a basic thing, rather than trying to get a textbook, I would look for a book in the actual library or something that covers that, and it's just giving me lots of examples of that thing. You know, I can find that in YouTube videos or whatever, but I'm not trying to learn it in the textbook way. I'd much rather get lots of different examples the same way natives are learning the vocabulary. Okay? So if you're learning a book or phrase and you're not remembering that in conversations, it means you haven't reviewed it enough. I talk about this in another video where I'm talking about getting to the like the highest level for moving through fluency. I'll introduce that very quickly, but I think I forget the name of that video, but it's like if you can't communicate fluently, you're stuck here, something like that. You can search the channel for it, but basically you have like 3 different levels. So the first level is where you're just getting exposure to the language. So if I expose you to the language, it means you're maybe listening to something on TV or the radio, or you read it in a book and you think, okay, I kind of understand that. Or even if you don't really hear it very well, you're still being exposed to the language. When you actually understand what you're hearing, you're moving to awareness. And this is where you actually feel, I feel pretty strong about this vocabulary. I can recognize it. This is where we have the level of passive vocabulary. So passive vocabulary rather than active vocabulary. So if you have passive vocabulary, it just means you can understand something, you recognize things, but you might not recall that or use it well in conversations yourself. And that's where we get to the highest level. And this is what I call ownership. So to get ownership of the language, it means you really have to spend a lot of time getting lots of naturally varied review. And that's what we do with books like this. So these are just some level, and you can kind of pick the various levels. And there are different skills you might try to improve with reading. A book like this is not really about fluency. This is more about really trying to understand language patterns. So a higher level book that obviously, you know, it's like more words on the page, and we're really focusing on fluency and trying to read very quickly. So like as you teach young children to read, you begin with just helping them understand individual words and really making sure they understand those sounds. And then we start adding more words. You get sentences and paragraphs and books, things like that. So if you want to move from exposure to awareness, most people are stuck here. So most of the people who watch my videos and they still have not become fluent, it's they're at the awareness level of learning language. So they understand the language, they can hear it, but then they get frustrated when they can't recall those words and phrases in their conversations. And the only way to get from here to ownership, and ownership meaning like the language feels like it's yours. So I feel like Japanese is a first language for me because I learn it as a first language rather than me trying to learn, I don't know, like Spanish or French, which feel like kind of second languages to me because I don't really understand them. I can't recall words and phrases very well. I tried learning those the typical way, and that's why I can't speak them. So I can recognize some vocabulary if people are speaking French or Spanish to me, but I wouldn't be able to have a conversation with people, okay? So again, awareness, really good for just understanding movies or TV shows, that kind of thing. But if you want to communicate, then you need to get more naturally varied review. All right, Wasim says, you're absolutely right, boss. Yes, this is very basic information, but you can think about how this applies to your language learning as well. Remember, native speakers, like you probably did this same thing in your native language. You're learning with books for native speakers, and your parents were not using one language to teach you another language. So if I want to teach my daughter English, and I'm giving her examples in English, I can't use Chinese to teach her English, okay? So I have to use English and then make it understandable. Like, oh, okay, it looks like there's some food here. That's pretty clear. Okay, we're trying to cook something. Oh, and look at that. We've got a spoon and a fork. So it looks like somebody should still be trying to improve. Like, if they don't quite understand something like that, it's like, oh, okay, look at that. You understand from the situation. We got food. And we're talking about eating, and so it's the understanding of that rather than trying to just tell you a definition or explain what something means, okay? And I'll mention very quickly, I think somebody mentioned you should start practicing your speaking skill. Yeah, so a lot of people think that they need to practice speaking in order to improve. But really what happens when you practice speaking before you get to the ownership level is you get into a conversation with people and then you just speak simply, or you can't really remember words and phrases very well, or you say something and you're worried about, am I using the right word or not? Am I using the right pronunciation or not? And all of those things come because you don't have a strong enough understanding. The foundation of communication is understanding. So it's the understanding that gives you confidence that lets you speak. I will give again my little iceberg example. We have the water floating here. When you see you're out on a boat, here's your little boat right here, and you see an iceberg. So this is a big block of ice floating in the water. And when you look at that, you think, oh wow, that's not very big at all. But the whole iceberg is much larger, and it's floating with most of the mass of it, most of the size of it are under the water. And so this is exactly the same thing for learning to speak. What you see here, you see native speakers communicating, speaking fluently without having to think about words or translations, anything like that. And that's because they spent all this time getting lots of naturally varied review, lots of understanding things in context. And these books are just kind of like one small example of that, okay? So we have like this book, like it's kind of like a piece of this puzzle, all right? So we have this book here is going to teach me this. And then I'm going to hear that same thing again in another book and maybe some related vocabulary over here. And even if you don't speak, you're still getting all of this review. And when you feel very confident about saying something because you know it so well, that's when you speak, okay? So the big mistake people make is they're trying to go to the speaking part first. They're trying to say, okay, how do I practice speaking? But remember, a lot of people don't really understand like how speaking practice works. So the basic idea for studying something like an instrument or trying to learn a sport is that you would take something like trying to play the piano. So my older daughter now is learning to play the piano, and she takes one song and just practices it again and again and again. And it's again the repetition of something, just simple repetition because the song doesn't change. But in real life, in real communication, it's a different conversation every time. So we can't just try to practice the same song. I can't try to repeat a phrase over and over again and then hopefully somebody uses that. It doesn't work that way. So what you do is you actually get lots of review, and you can do that all by yourself. So the point is to get lots of review, get naturally varied review. This is where Again, just like this, we have a basic theme and we're trying to learn something and hear it in many different ways. So we're going to hear, I like it when we go to school. I like it when we eat together. I like it when we go camping, something like that. And so as you hear all these, we're learning all these different phrases, but the I like it when part is what we're focusing on. And then you can take that in, I like it when you do something, or she likes it when I do something, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So the point is not to try to repeat things and try to practice speaking, it's just to get more input. So if you don't feel confident about something, it's because you don't understand it well enough. So right now, I can speak very confidently about fluency because I understand how the process works. I'm fluent in 2 different languages, and so I can understand and speak confidently about that. I could not speak confidently about, I don't know, how to build a house or how to fix a car or something because I just don't know much about that. I could learn about that, but if you notice, if you are new to the channel and you have not seen the how to make espresso video on this channel, you'll see making espresso. So this is like a little, cup of coffee. And pardon me, I don't use the terminology or the terms correctly, but I didn't know anything about how to make espresso. But after watching 4 different people make espresso, I feel much more confident about that. I learned new vocabulary, I understood the different steps that are required to do that, and that's how I feel much more confident about that. All right? So the goal is to get lots of input, to feel much more confident about that, and then the speech is the natural result of this. Okay? So most people are doing this backwards. They're trying to put lots of pressure on themselves to speak. Okay, I have to get out, I have to find lots of people to practice speaking, and then I'm going to have trouble, I'm going to make myself feel nervous and have a lot of pressure on myself, and that's what's going to stop me from communicating. Okay? All right, let's go back through these. That was the whole lesson. Hopefully people understand that. I will hang around for a while. Let's see. Okay, we got some time. And answer questions. But hopefully this makes sense. All right. All right, let's see. So, okay, I answered Salima's question. All right, let's see. So I like it when you take a shower. Teacher, I live in the moon. You live inside the moon? You live inside the moon like this? So you're like on the inside of it? Inside, or do you live on the moon like that? Now this is another naturally varied review example of something where we're going to compare different things. So someone says, I live in the moon. I understand it's a joke, or maybe they do, actually. That'd be pretty cool. But I live in the moon. I live in the moon. And I say, really? You live in the moon, or do you live on the moon? And then people get it like, I get the difference now. So the first step is really understanding what's happening. So the difference between these, and then obviously the second step, the even more important step, is the naturally varied review. So you continue to get lots of examples of something, because if you just even understand something, you won't develop fluency in that. Remember the examples of going from awareness up to ownership. The only way to get that is by actually having a lot more examples of that thing. So you really can do this by yourself. It's really easy. You're just getting lots of input. All right. All right, now if you already did a comment, don't post it again, because I will go through lots of examples as I go through these different ones. All right. So okay, I answered that one. So can we use video instead of a book? Does it work the same? Yes, but it's actually really helpful for you to do the active process of reading rather than the passive process of watching a video. So you should get lots of these things. What we do in Fluent for Life is give you both. So actually you get reading, writing, listening, speaking, and even try to teach different things to other people. But that's how you get fluent. You're getting the same information in slightly different ways. And that also means you might read the information or hear the information or write the information, see the information, that kind of thing. So Rommel says this could work with AI. Yes, so actually I've thought about trying to turn this into kind of a thing with AI. But the thing that people are missing with AI is that they're looking for a speaking partner, when what they really should be looking for is how they can get a lot more review a lot faster. And you don't need AI for that. Let's see, Spark fee. 2 days left for my certification exam. What advice can you give, and how should I spend the rest of my time? I don't know what certification for what. I'm guessing English. If you mean English, look at whatever the specific information required for that test is and just do that. Just You just have to cram for the test. There isn't really much better I can give you. So Dan C, tell me the best way to learn phrasal verbs. Option 1, all phrasal verbs that I can think with the phrasal verb go, or option 2, all the phrasal verbs I can think with the preposition over. So that's again another good example of how we might have like something like go. So I actually show you how to do this in the visual guide to phrasal verbs. I recommend you actually do it with the verb rather than the preposition. I'll show you why right here. But you might have, so like go, I don't know, go for, go to, or whatever. Or we could have different prepositions like spill over. Or we could have, I don't know, fly over or whatever. Or something, just some examples of things like this. You could really do both. It's a little bit easier, number one, to find things based on a verb like this. So if I look for like prepositions with go or prepositions with something, phrasal verbs with that, it would be a little bit easier to find those. You can find that like phrasal verbs that have the preposition for or of or something in them. It's a little bit more complicated to search for. But go is certainly easier, and you will find lots of lists for those. And like this is actually how we organize it in our own program, the Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs. But whichever one of these you do, it's not very important. The most important thing is that you understand it by the core meaning of the word. So if you're going to learn it by go or you're going to learn it by over, either one of those would be okay. But the important thing is to understand the core verb and then really see how it works visually, because that's what phrasal verbs are based on, and then learn the more figurative meanings of that. If you look for phrasal verbs on our channel, you will find more videos about that specifically. So go through, go over, excellent. Okay, yeah, glad that makes sense. All right. So your approach is great. Couldn't agree more. Glad to hear it, Tariq. Thank you very much. Margot says, is there another language that you want to learn? There are actually like many languages I'd like to learn. I'd like to learn different kinds of languages though. So maybe something like Arabic would be interesting because it's a different written language and a different spoken language as well. So very different from English. So maybe like Chinese might be good too, but it's like almost a little bit easier because I know a lot of the written language now in Japanese, and there's some overlap there. Let's see. Shurkin says, so getting enough input would be enough to reach fluency. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Getting enough input is like, this is 95% of what you should be doing. You should be spending a lot of time listening to people and understanding things. That's how you get fluent. So it's not about like trying to repeat words. And I made another video recently, and I think that's called like, if you only have 15 minutes a day to learn, do this. So if you only have 15 minutes a day to learn, do this. And in that video, I talk about spending time and what's a better use of your time. So if you had to choose between two things, one of them is trying to find people and practice speaking, and the other is getting more input. The input one is going to be much better for you. Only when you really feel confident will you want to speak, and you will, until you reach that point, probably not feel very good about using things. You will be in conversations, but you will not feel so confident about a lot of your vocabulary. So usually what happens is you have a person that has like a large passive vocabulary, so they know many words, but then they only use a very small amount of them. And this small amount is, not surprisingly, what you feel confident using. So of course people will feel confident about using this. They will be able to understand the rest of this information likely in a conversation, but they will not feel confident about speaking. So this is why a lot of people know a lot, but they don't really speak, and they often, if they do speak, they're using very simple sentences, so they don't feel very confident. Again, when you learn the native way, you really do spend a lot more time just getting understandable messages. That's how you get fluent. All right. I think, let's see here. All right, so what is it? I can't read that. My eyes are getting worse over here. So Idelito Hello, my teacher. Hello, teacher. I'm Brazil. I learned English alone. Today I'm learning Spanish alone in my home. Yep, glad to hear. It's possible to do, especially with all the information on the internet now. It's very easy. Gabriel, I don't know what is the best book to study for C1 test. I don't know. If you're looking for a specific English test, I would look for just information about that. I'm sure you can Google that exact question and it would tell you. I focus on conversational fluency, and if you learn the way natives learn, you will have much better test scores also. But if you're just trying to improve for a specific test, then get whatever you need for that. Let's see. And again, all right, same question about the certification test. A friend of mine said that Empower Cambridge works good. It works well. It works well. I don't know what that is, but if that's it sounds empowering. If it gives you power, that must be a good thing then. All right, I got to answer that question. Does anyone can help me out? You can say, can anyone help me out? Yes, I would have Google help you out with a question like that. Maybe instead of books, you could try with AI. Yep. I mean, there are some things AI can do, like language is going to be the most difficult one with AI because there's so many things that AI, it's still, even like AI translation it's getting better, but it's still not very good. But you really should just have lots of native examples, and those already exist. You can find lots of them on YouTube. This is what we do in Fluent for Life. You can find them anywhere. So I live on Earth, yes. So you live on Earth, or you could live in the Earth as well, if you live like inside of it. I think you already have ready to everything and we'll handle it. I don't know what that means. All right, I think we got that question about phrasal verbs. Let's see. Guillermo, let's see, question. Is there some book who makes a good review upon anaphora and cataphora with examples of both phenomena? I would Google that. I have no idea. Maybe, I don't know. Say the planets' names. Like the planets' names, like Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, like the name of the planets. I'm not going to say you say the planet names. Google that. You guys are wasting my time. Let's see. Where are you living right now? Still in Japan? Yes, I'm in Japan. I'm in Nagasaki, Japan currently. Shurkin says, but I've always read online that the only way to reach proficiency is to practice the language. Yes, so that's absolutely true, but practicing the language is different from what most people think it is. So that's the big thing. I will leave it up to you though. So if you, and pardon me, there's of course a fire truck or an ambulance or something as usual. So if your way is working for you and you are going out and you are using the language and you are becoming a fluent speaker, fantastic. Continue doing that. Most people are going to struggle with that because they don't feel confident enough about what they know. So it's much better to feel confident about the language when you really feel like, now I got it. Then you will speak. Okay, so you just do that for more things. And as you continue to feel better about the language, you will speak fluently. So the fluency develops and then it kind of comes out so that the speaking is the result of your understanding. And the understanding leads to confidence. Okay, so you can try to get out and speak, and the practice like that kind of practice is repeating things or listening to other people, but research has proven this same thing. I talk about this when I'm explaining to people about Fluent for Life, so you can learn more about that by clicking on the link in the description below this video, but it talks about the exact same process. I live on the moon, okay. All right, let's see. So yes, you'll find lots of people that say that, but again, if it's working for you, continue doing it. But a lot of people still try to speak, but they don't feel more fluent, and this is the reason why. They just don't know the language enough. And people should be very excited about this. I was excited when I found this because I was like, wow, you mean I don't have to go out and embarrass myself and speak in front of people before I'm ready? That sounds like a good way to learn to me. But, to each his own, whatever you like. This is what I recommend because it's worked for me and my students. All right, so how can I speak English fast? So the same answer to that question is the same answer to every other question about this. You have to know the language so well that you use it without thinking, and that's when you speak fluently. That's when you speak quickly. That's when you can respond confidently and make jokes and all those kinds of things, okay? So if you want to speak faster, spend more time really getting to know the language. I've used flowcharts and they help me a lot. Fluxocharts? I don't know what that means. For learning languages, if that's helpful, yeah. That's, I guess, another way to set up naturally varied review. Tiago, what books with easy vocabulary can you recommend to us? Boom. Same stuff that you would go to a, like, I like it when, good night moon, big bear, small bear. So these are the kinds of things you can just find either on Amazon if you're just looking for different examples, or you go to a local children's, like the children's bookstore or area of a bookstore for kids. So if you can't find that where you live in person, go online. Look up a book for kids like popular English children's books. And you can even look that up by age. So Amazon will give you books for 4-year-olds, books for 5-year-olds, that kind of thing. And so look at that stuff and really look at the books and think, even if it sounds like a simple or easy book, can you use that fluently in a conversation? If you can, move on to another book. But if you read something and you're like, you know what, I don't really feel so confident using that. Maybe I should spend more time reviewing that. But remember, the point is to get naturally varied review. You don't want to just repeat something again and again. That's not really going to make you understand it better. The reason to get naturally varied review is because you're getting to see it in many different contexts, and that makes the understanding of it easier for you. Okay? So that's why we do that. Let's see. All right, so Dancy, are you the only one talking about this way of learning? Well, I might be the only one who talks about it and actually has a system to help people do it. So Stephen Krashen is a linguist, among others, who knows about this, and he discovered this like in the lab, actually testing different people. I discovered it myself, just failing to learn languages for different languages for 15 years. And so when I came to Japan and still struggled to learn, and I was very surprised because I thought you get fluent by speaking. I thought you get fluent by immersion, being around people. But really, you have to get that language very systematically. If I put you in an ocean, you're probably going to have trouble swimming if you don't know how to swim. So I should teach you how to swim first, and then I put you in the ocean. So it makes you a lot more prepared for being able to swim. So in the language learning situation, it's much easier if you get not just immersion, but systematic immersion. So I don't want to just hear lots of the language that I don't understand. If you put me in Germany today, like in some parliament building or a government building, and people are just speaking German to each other, I'm not going to learn German that way. But I would learn German if I go to a German kindergarten and I watch a teacher, maybe a few days, they're trying to explain something, and I learn it all in German that way. Okay? Well, sensei, ohayou gozaimasu. Sayo-san. All right, let's see here. Do we have here? So could you okay, I think I answered that one. All right. So many who are definitively not fluent in English are like C level. Like level C3. Yeah, again, I don't even focus on the particular like A1, B2, C, all that. It's just like, can you enjoy a conversation or not? It's really that simple for me. All right, can we become fluent without idioms and slang? I'm very poor in these, Salima asks. Yes, remember that the fluency doesn't mean what you know. Okay, there's information. Remember that people can know a lot of words. You can have some slang, phrasal verbs, idioms. You can have lots of vocabulary in here, but not be fluent. Okay, so you can still have a passive vocabulary, but not be fluent in that information. Fluency is how well you speak. It's not what you know. I'll say that again. Fluency is how well you speak. It's not what you know. And remember that young kids, a lot of native English-speaking children, they can speak better than many adults, even though those adults know more words. So my daughters, so my 2-year-old or my 4-year-old and my 8-year-old daughter now, so this is, let's say, the vocabulary of an adult English learner, and this is the vocabulary of my 8-year-old or 4-year-old or 7-year-old. They have a smaller vocabulary, but they speak more fluently. And the reason is because it's not that they know more words, because they don't. They know fewer words, but they actually know that vocabulary very well because they review it so much. So it's not even like that they practice speaking something again and again. They review that. They hear it again and again from TV shows and parents and school and friends. That's how they learn the vocabulary. So most of the learning is not speaking. Most of the learning is not speaking, okay? If you think about yourself during the day, most of what you do during the day is not speaking. You are like, doing some work or maybe listening to something or watching TV or whatever. You're just getting lots of input. You're not speaking. Okay, so speaking is a very small part of what you do. Even a professional speaker, so someone like me, like I'll spend, I don't know, what is this, like an hour or something? We've been talking for almost an hour. But that's only, how many hours do I have in my day? Most of my day is not speaking. Most of my day is like reading things or writing things or listening to things, watching things, and I spend very little time speaking. Okay, so you don't need to spend a lot of time speaking in order to become a fluent speaker. The whole point is to understand the language really well. All right. Let's see here. So okay, I have to answer that question. So Mr. Meyer, please use learning, please, without using Google Translate. Yes, if you can, you should be learning things at a level that's understandable for you. So do you think listening is better to be fluent? Yes, it's not about just listening. It could be watching or reading or writing something even. The point is to get the same vocabulary natives are learning. So you really need three things. The first is native vocabulary. The second is you need to understand it like a native. So this means you're not using translations or trying to study grammar rules, that kind of thing. And then the third thing is you're getting lots of review. So you need that naturally varied review to give you many different examples of that thing. So that could be examples in different tenses, examples about different situations, examples from different speakers. But that's all naturally varied review. The point is to simulate how a native is learning, but you can actually do this much faster than a learner or than a native speaker, because you can systematize how it works. All right, so you can get the specific information you want rather than a child a child really doesn't control their own learning environment. They're just getting information from people, and either you have a good teacher or you do not. And that's, kids will obviously like learn the language over time, but you can become fluent much faster even as a child learning the language if you have parents who can teach you well. So my kids are learning to speak Japanese and English, and they don't even have much time to listen to a lot of English. They spend more time with Japanese during the day, so I have to be very efficient with how I teach them. All right, let's see here. I dream of talking and going to the USA. Well, come on over. Is it normal that I can't understand almost anything in some English songs? Yes. That's depending on what the music is. Music can be quite difficult to understand. So I still, if I'm listening to some Japanese music, I can't understand a lot of it. It maybe is like a phrase I'm not used to, or some slang or something, or it's just not spoken very clearly. So don't feel bad about that. Often I will read the transcript or the song lyrics and think like, wow, that's what they said. But even like native English speakers, there's some songs that people like they don't actually know what the words are, and you will see videos online of people asking like, can you sing this song? And they sing it incorrectly, and these are native English speakers. All right, so Maya, when do you broadcast? You give such information. I'm excited and I want to study immediately. Well, usually I'm doing these live videos. I've been doing them lately in Japan time, so it's Monday morning in Japan. So Mondays and Thursdays, usually. But I don't have a schedule. I enjoy my freedom, and I might not be available sometimes, but I enjoy teaching, and it's nice to see you all. But if you'd like to get me like teaching you actual stuff, most of the things I cover in YouTube videos, it's trying to help people understand how fluency works, and that they should stop learning the traditional way. So stop learning English as a second language and learn it as a first language the same way natives do. But if you want the actual lessons, if you're like really excited to learn, just click on the link in the description below and get Fluent for Life. Just join that program. Amaterasu. Let's see here. Okay, so how are you, my teacher? I love English to talk. Glad to hear. Well, I can easily talk to anyone in English, have long conversations about any topic, but when it comes to movies and songs, I don't understand some things. Any advice for improving that? Yep, and that's you just have to focus on the particular content. There's a lot of cultural information in movies and even conversations. But you learn that by spending more time with it. So again, it's just a process of time. But it's much faster if you learn the native way rather than learning like a student. Hi, how are you? Says Lisseth. I'm doing very well. I'm confused grammar. Yes, so again, Even basic books like this will teach grammar. This is the same thing we do. If you struggle with basic grammar, get Frederick. So that's also in the description below this video. It takes you through basic grammar, but helps you understand it like a native. All right, so we're not teaching you a bunch of rules. The point is to learn the language the same way natives do. So Salima says, my son, 3 years old, speaks good English. So you'd say he speaks better English than me. Speaks better English than me. I won't lie to you, my English has gaps in speech. There are phrases and words that I forget to say. Yeah, Mario, don't feel bad about that. There's nothing, again, if you want to fill those gaps, this is how you do it. It's learning like a native. I couldn't remember words when reading. Yep. So if you have, usually means you're probably learning or reading something that's at a higher level. So I recommend people learn with things that give you about 80 to 90% of the vocabulary in the book that you can understand. So that way, new information, it's easy to understand, but that way you won't forget words. So find something at a good level for you, and you will build fluency that way as well. I too think speaking is the strongest. If you can speak it, you can write it. Let's see, maybe we're losing our connection. We'll have to see here. Let's see. I don't know. We'll see if anybody posts on this, but maybe I've lost the connection. Oh no. But in general, if this is still hearing me, you want to make sure you're understanding things well enough to be able to speak. But some people, like, you can develop speaking before you learn to read and write. Like, that's what I did in Japanese. So I learned my learning to speak is much better than learning to read and write. So I have to go back and do that now. Let's see. So, hi, love your videos. My born language is Chinese. I learn a lot from your videos. Glad to hear it. Yep. So if you'd like to learn more, if you're not already a member of Fluent for Life, this is where we really go into detail about all these different things. We cover all the grammar, pronunciation, listening to different native speakers, and we basically teach you how to have fluent conversations. It's a pretty cool program. So you can click on the link in the description to learn more about that. Let's see. Again, like, these mini books are great. Yeah, and like, it's just instead of thinking about it like, oh, that's for children, it's just like, ooh, that's a book that focuses on just this one grammar point or whatever. So get that, and you can learn a lot about that just from particular kids' information. Even watching kids YouTube or cartoons on TV about that will help you as well. Muriel, I thought muscle memory is a key for fluency because oftentimes I can understand others speaking English perfectly, but when I want to speak or respond, my words don't come out spontaneously. Muriel, I would imagine that has very little to do with muscle memory. Muscle memory is like a very tiny part of this like last step for communication. Most people can't remember what they want to say because they don't know it well enough. It's like trying to remember a password. So if you hear the password one time, you will forget it. But if I tell you the password like again and again, you will remember that password. And so especially if you get it in many different ways. I can give my like quick example for like how to learn an alien language. I haven't given that in a while, but if you'd like to see that example, it will help you understand what I'm talking about. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. All right, so how to get rid of, let's see, language hesitation. Would you recommend giving us books recommendations? Abdullah Rahman says, yeah, so the basic idea here is that you just need more naturally varied review. So if you're hesitating in conversations, it means you don't feel confident about what you know. So you think you know it, you have maybe a passive level of vocabulary, but you don't have an active, really strong, fluent understanding of that. So it's not about having one book in particular. It's more about getting that from lots of different people. Okay, and it could be, when I say people, I mean books or movies or TV shows or actual people you're listening to. All right, so I would try to focus on a particular thing. Like me, if I have a particular grammar point or something that I need trouble or that I have trouble with, I want to focus more on that one. All right. And then comprehension, obviously, this improves over time as you get these things. But the truth is you get fluent in particular words and phrases as you know them better. So you build fluency word by word rather than in the language itself. And the fluency in a language improves as you get fluent in particular words. Okay, so if you're not fluent in any words, so if you know a lot, but you're not fluent in any of this, then you won't speak fluently. But you will be fluent in maybe some of this, and you can use that fluently. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Ariel says, how natives understand, could you give us an example on the last English or Japanese word you learned? The last Japanese word I learned. Well, something interesting, I can talk very quickly about me learning Japanese, and this is learning kanji. And so, like, I learned just an interesting example. I probably won't even remember. So, again, the whole idea of naturally varied review is you're really making connections with lots of different things. And so what you're trying to do here is build a network in your mind, and the network, it's like a spider web that really becomes stronger because it has so many connections. So even if you lose one connection, like you can't remember something, you can easily switch to something else that you can remember. All right, so this is the kind of spider web example, and these are connected to other things, and you develop a strong web of understanding that really helps you communicate fluently. And this is different, so this is the native way of learning vocabulary rather than the non-native, the traditional way. What people are doing is they're taking a word in their language and then trying to get a translation in English. Okay? So they're beginning with a word in their language and then trying to connect it with a word in English. Now, if you look at the difference between these two approaches, so this one, again, if you forget something, it's like your brain just switches to something else. And you will see this in conversations, even with native speakers, if you watch carefully. And really skilled speakers, even just native English speakers, they can easily switch from one thing to something else. So maybe they forget a word, and you can see in like a moment, like they forgot maybe one word, or they couldn't think about that, but they easily switch to something else. Okay, so this is the magic behind fluency, is you're really just moving from one thing in this web of understanding to another. But with this one, if you just try to learn a translation, if you lose this connection here, you're screwed. You can't remember what that particular word is, and you only have one example. So now, oh no, what do I do? You're stuck in the conversation, you forget words and vocabulary, and now you can't communicate. So as I mentioned before, like learning some new kanji that I'm learning now. See if I can remember this. So this is the Japanese for kyushoku, which is, it's like school lunch. And so when I'm learning kanji like this, like rather than trying to translate something from one language into another, like, okay, let me like get a translation of this. What I'm looking for is different examples in Japanese. And so another example that uses this same kanji is like kyujo, which is salary. And so if I'm just getting a translation, it's like, oh, look at that. That's the same. Isn't that interesting? It's the same. It means like, it's like a portion or a ration or a piece of something. So this is the kanji for like for eating or for food. And it's probably the same thing in Chinese. The way you say it would be different. The Chinese speakers, maybe if you know Japanese, you can answer that. But the basic idea here is we're getting this, and then I connect this kanji with a different one. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, is it the same word in Chinese? Or like, do you have like something like this? So this is the Japanese for school lunch, kyushoku. But it would be different, but also we have like kyuryo, which is like salary. Okay? So as I get this example, it's the same idea of building this web over here. So when I'm learning something new, I already know the words, like I already know kyushoku, I've heard it many times, but I see the kanji, I learn the kanji for it. Like, okay, that's interesting. So it's like a portion of food. And I'm not really trying to translate that, I just understand it like a native speaker. Okay? So as you get more examples, you build the network. And then maybe this one, it's like, there might be like shokuji or like shokupan, or I might have like other examples of words that I'm learning, like taberu. It's the same thing. So that's interesting. Like we might have kind of food, like kyushoku or like taberu. And there's different ways I can write that. But the point is I'm building a network in Japanese in my mind. I'm not trying to make a like a connect. I'm explaining it to you now in English because maybe you don't know Japanese. But the point is I'm making connections in my mind, and the connections are what enable me to use it fluently. So remember, as I just said, it's important to understand that even natives will forget vocabulary from time to time. It happens. It happens pretty frequently. Often people will or they will forget how to spell words. So people like want to say a word and they can't remember how to spell it. So they write a different word. And this is kind of a joke among native English speakers because spelling can be like a tricky thing for people, but that's a common problem. So don't feel bad. It's not just learners. It's not just you. Native speakers have this as well. But the main difference is that it's the way of learning the language. Okay? So speaking is a consequence of understanding. Yes, Julian, that's it, exactly. Okay? So we don't begin with speech because if I can't say something, if I can't remember it well, how would I be able to use that anyway? It doesn't make any sense. So if I get into a conversation and like people are saying things to me and I don't know what they're talking about, I'm going to feel very embarrassed and frustrated about that. But if I'm well prepared for that conversation, I know the vocabulary, I feel very confident about it, then of course I will have lots of fun and the speaking will happen automatically. Okay? So there's a slight difference here at the very edge where you're actually feeling more confident about speaking, where you still might have a little bit of shyness or something, and that's where you might have a muscle memory issue where you remember something but you don't pronounce it perfectly. Like that's a very tiny part of learning the language. You will feel much better if you get lots more examples of something. Now, another example of this for improving your pronunciation is this same idea. So if I want to learn how to pronounce something, it's much better for me to hear 10 different people pronounce that word. So if I can hear that, then I feel, okay, each of these people is pronouncing it a little bit differently. So there is a kind of correct pronunciation, but everyone sounds a little bit different. Okay? So all these things are connected. You should stop learning the traditional way, stop trying to make connections in your mind between your native language and English, and start making more connections in English. All right? Okay, let me see. That was a long response. Okay, let me see here how much time we have. Okay, we're still doing all right. Got a little bit of time left. Which accent is the hardest one in the U.S.? I think New York Italian. Huh. Actually, I don't know. It depends on who the speaker is and where they're coming from. But there are some like you could be in like the southern like Creole accent, something like that. That could be even more difficult. But it depends on who you're speaking with. And some accents are faster than others. All right. So how natives understand. Okay, I answered that question already. All right, so comprehension is more important than remembering a signal words. I don't know what that means when, but the basic idea is that you get fluent in individual vocabulary as you understand it. So you can remember one thing really well because you understand it very well, but something else you would not. So you don't get fluent in the language, you get fluent in individual words and phrases as you understand them well. All right, so Dribos, what kind of things should I focus on Japanese for books? I'm completely beginner in Japanese, teacher. I know that you know a lot of Japanese as well. Any recommendation? I would start with these in Japanese. It's that simple. So get lots of input. Watch Japanese for kids, and it can be tricky because in Japanese, like there are a lot of like sound words. It's called gyongo, which is like sounds for sounds, so sound names like onomatopoeia, I guess. But it's like bang, crash, snap, that kind of thing. So those things like uzu uzu or the gunya gunya or like other things like that in Japanese, which can be a little bit tricky. But usually in a book like this that's not for like super simple beginners, like a little bit higher, so it's a little bit more clear. But you're looking for things like this, and most books will naturally do this. Like a good book, if you look at the most popular books, I'm pretty sure most of them, it's just a lot of repetition. So it's naturally varied review. We're going to take something and review it in many different ways. Okay? Or we will take, you will find series of books. Like another book that I read to my kids is the Clifford books. Clifford. So So this is, I don't know how, if this is even around still, but so this is Clifford, Clifford, Clifford the Big Red Dog. There might even be, I think, cartoons of that as well, that I have not seen those. But the books often have the same kind of format. And so you get used to that format. You read the book, it's like, okay, here's a thing. Clifford tries to help and he does something stupid or, but accidentally he's a lovable dog, a giant red dog. But he has these little adventures. And so if you read a bunch of those books, you get used to that. So another thing in Japanese, I've used the example before, is Doraemon, which is a slightly higher level. I don't recommend that for beginners because there's a lot of kanji in it, even though it does give the furigana, which is how to read that. But it's the same basic format for all of those stories. It's like, here's like a problem we need to solve, and then like they do something, and usually the main character, a little boy, Nobi, he thinks he like has a good idea about how to do something, but then it doesn't work. And so it's kind of an interesting story, but you'll see that again and again. All right. Let's see. Okay. So now I get stuck because we get a bunch more comments in here. All right, so I got the Japanese question. All right, so Abdullah Rahman says, thank you very much, Fanny. Hi, Drew. Thank you for these classes. They are extremely helpful. What do you think is much better, reading the book or listening to an audiobook? Fanny, I would not choose between either of those. I would do both. But the interesting thing is, like an audiobook or a book, the reason I'm showing these examples of stuff for little kids is because it gives you something. It's a small chunk, a small piece of the language that you can review again and again, and it's much faster to review that. If you have a 100-page or a 200-page book, you are probably not going to read that again after you finish reading it. So this is why a lot of people, like the video I made about how to speak fluently about almost anything, and that's another popular video on my channel right now, is talking about like people making the mistake of learning a lot of information, but they don't know it very well. So you have like a very wide passive vocabulary, but it's very shallow. So you don't have depth of ability to communicate. So most people, if you read a long book, you just get the story for that, but it would be quite boring for you to go back and repeat it. So it's not very good for naturally varied review because you wouldn't read a book like that many times. But you could watch a movie about it, could listen to the audiobook about it. You could watch some like different things like The Lord of the Rings, read the books. Then watch the movies, then listen to the audiobook, then try to, read some sections or look at some comics or something like that. The point is to focus on information, and it's much easier to focus when it's something short like this. That's why I recommend this. So find something for your level, even if you think it's too easy, but review it anyway. Steve says, should I practice the words which I think I really understand? Well, you don't have to you don't have to say anything. If you really understand something and you remember it, then move on to the next thing. And then just use that in conversations when the conversation opportunity arises. So if you're in a conversation and it's like, they're talking about this thing, I know about that, then you can talk about that. But if it's something you don't know much about, spend more time listening, even in the conversation, and you will hear and understand more. So you learn a lot, even in conversations, just by listening and understanding from the context. So Julian, I agree with you that nobody can speak about what they don't understand. The real problem with English is not speaking, but rather understanding what you're listening to. Yes, so that's exactly my point. So like people, either you don't understand the vocabulary very well, or you don't understand what other people are saying to you. But either it's really the same problem. So I like English, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian languages that I understand, playing GTA. Very good. Yes, so speaking is a consequence of understanding. So sometimes I can predict the meaning of some words without looking them up, and that's because I've been reading a lot since I was in college. Yeah, so you will find language patterns. That's your brain recognizing patterns. That's the whole point. So that's why we read Big Bear, Small Bear. It's like teaching us the patterns about that. Like too big, too small, too loose, too tight. And then you also learn like the pieces of words, like prefixes and suffixes, and they will help you understand things too. So it's the same thing for me learning Japanese. So I will find some example of something and it's like, I don't know how to read that, but I can understand what it says. So it's kind of a tricky, interesting thing. So the network idea is quite insightful. Yes. So this is again your brain. Your brain is like a network system. So you should give it information like that. You wouldn't put up with me for a second yet. So the first connection could be a connection to a translation, couldn't it be? Or would it be better for an absolute beginner build his fluency? Fluency is English web from zero. Yes. So you would do that all in English. If you're absolute beginner, so anybody watching this who has children and you want to teach them English, get them Frederick. Just download that. You can start that for free. It's in the description below this video, and it will show you how to learn English all in English. And that's not even like the highest level of what we will do or the best example of that, but we wanted to do that first to help people learn how to read. But yes, it's possible. Remember that when you teach your kids your native language, you're not using a different language to teach them that. So if I am a native Spanish speaker, I'm not using French to teach Spanish to my child. So again, it's the same thing. You would be learning all things in English. You wouldn't be trying to use a translation for that. You want to start that right from the beginning. All right. Okay. So it's the K Kim. This is my first time of live streaming from Korea. Welcome. Nice to see you. I'm facing challenges when I study phrasal verbs. How should I master phrasal verbs? Get our visual guide to phrasal verbs. You can find examples of this on our YouTube channel. So to go to our YouTube channel and just in the search, you can type in like phrasal verbs and we have examples from that. Like phrasal verbs with run is a very good example. It shows you exactly how to learn those. Julian again says, is it true that online messages claiming you can learn English in just 3 months are false advertising? It seems like they are a very short amount of time to become proficient in a language. I don't know what the like specific claim is, like what it means about like learn English in 3 months or whatever. Actually, what I claim, and my claim is very specific for people who already know a lot of English but can't speak. So I tell people you can get fluent in or speak fluent English, really is the actual message, to speak fluent English in the next 30 days or less. Because again, you get fluent in individual words and phrases. The point is not to get fluent in the whole language. That's impossible in 3 months. I don't care who you are. And unless you're like a robot or something and you can get all the information, it's not even useful though. Because even native English speakers, we only use like if you look at, I don't know, it's like 90%. I forget the exact number, but a very small number, maybe like 2%. So less than 2% of, and this looks even bigger than 2%. Unfortunately, again, I need to make this like a better circle over here. So 2% is like very, very tiny. So 2% of the vocabulary, so this is all the vocabulary of the language, which is like, I don't know, let's just say 170,000 words in common usage in the English language. But you only need 2% of that to actually have communication. Okay, so most reading, writing, all of that is all done with 2%. And I think even the word the, just by itself, is 7% of all printed text. 7%. Like if you look at a page, like 7% of that is just the word the. Isn't that interesting? So there's a power curve of vocabulary. So if we were to draw like a chart of like all the words in the English language and how often they are used, it's going to be a power curve like this. So you have a word like the up here and like other very frequently used words, and then most words are not used at all. So if you're learning, you can become fluent if you learn the most commonly used stuff for the things you want to talk about. So what we do in Fluent for Life is we take you through the most commonly used things for different situations. So if you're trying to learn how to have a conversation about, I don't know, like family or relationships or going to the doctor or playing sports or any other common things like that in business or professional life or just everyday common things, you can get fluent in the next 30 days about that. So the process actually happens very quickly. So you could learn, if you're learning to know like a few words, if you imagine like on day one, you would learn like, I don't know, 10 new words or something like that. And on day two, you would review some of that again and learn a few new things. So you build vocabulary, fluency, grammar, pronunciation, all of that just by going through this process. So it's basically helping you learn like a native, but much faster. So it's possible. I don't know what most people are doing. for like getting fluent in 30 or like 3 months or whatever. It just depends on, and I don't know what they do, but if they don't do this, it's probably not going to help you speak very well, because you can learn a language quite quickly, but you actually won't be a good speaker if you learn it the traditional way. And the reason is because how you learn is how you speak. So if you spend a lot of time learning the language through translations, then you will translate when you speak. But if you learn like a native, if you develop this little web, this network of understanding in your mind, that's how you get fluent. All right, Ariel, greetings from Cuba. I've been following you for a time now. Glad to hear it. Let's see, I grasped English for 2 months, I think, but my English isn't much good as a native learning, but what is the meaning of learning a language is the key point. Yeah, so again, just to be clear about that, you get fluent in individual words and phrases as you understand them better. So usually you hear a word, and like if you only hear it one time, you will forget that. But if you hear it again and again, and you hear it in a different context, that's how you build fluency. So you don't have to repeat that. You don't have to say that word again and again to remember it. You need to hear it and see it and use it in different ways like that. That's what builds your fluency. All right. Well, I think we're getting to the end of this here. Let's see how much time I have. Whoop, I'm going to have to leave in a little bit. Your video and voice are not matching. Oh, no. That sounds like trouble. I understand English when listening, but I'm still not fluent in speaking. Yeah, it just means you don't have enough review. That's really the answer to that. I estimate that you are 35 years old. Is that true? That's interesting. You think I'm 35? Well, I'm 42 years old. And what I said here, the English natives talk are hidden here. I don't know what that means. I bet and you bet. I can't tell them. I'm not clear about them. Could you tell me the difference? Oh, it just means like I'm guessing. So again, this is where you learn. Native speakers are learning the language through situations. So just like we showed at the beginning of this video. So if we have I like it when. So we're looking at this book, like what's the situation happening here? They've got a radio or some music or something. They're jumping around. So it means they're maybe having a party or dancing or something like that. And so you can see, like we understand from the situation. Now we can learn a couple of different ways to express this. And so we might have like a particular word or phrase, and then we learn like, I guess your name is something, or I guess you probably like skateboarding. So if I look at you and you have a skateboarding hat and you're holding a skateboard and like other things like that, I can guess you're holding a skateboard, okay? But another way of saying the same thing is I bet. So it's like you're kind of gambling. Like I would pay money, I would bet you probably like skateboarding. And just the short way to say it is, I bet you like skateboarding. Okay? I bet. All right? Does that make sense? So we have one situation where we really understand the situation itself. So we're talking about somebody, and maybe we're guessing about something, but we can also just say, I bet. Okay? So this is how natives are learning the language. They will hear or experience this same situation again and again in their life, and then they will hear different natives saying different things, but it's still describing the same thing, okay, if that makes sense. Let's see. All right, what time is it where you are now? It's like 11:20 a.m. on Monday morning. Hello from Colombia. It says, David, nice to see you there. I struggled in reading section in IELTS. Yeah, it just means you need more practice with it. Keep an eye out. Tsubasa from Yokohama. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. What is the very best way to learn phrasal verbs? Yeah, people are very interested in phrasal verbs. Yes, click on just go to our channel, search phrasal verbs, and you will find more about that. But yeah, definitely watch our phrasal verbs with run video, and that will show you how it works. Naruto from Konoha. Nice to see everybody there. Is it a good idea to learn English through jokes? Yeah, sure, if you understand them. It's interesting to watch, like, especially now that my daughters are a little bit older, they're learning puns. So a pun, is usually like, we call this the lowest form of humor. That's an interesting way to describe it. So a pun is like night. So K-N-I-G-H-T and night. So we will take two words that sound the same, but they have different meanings and make a joke about that. So as an example, what animal, I'll give you, so this is the kind of joke that a child would learn because they're learning different uses of vocabulary for the same sound. So what animal is always ready to travel? So that's your joke. What animal is always ready to travel? And kind of like jokes, we have riddles. So this is a bit more of a riddle than a joke. But you will learn like the kind of culture and other things at a higher level with higher level jokes. But these words are these kinds of jokes are almost always about vocabulary and learning different ways of saying things. So you might hear like one word that has two different meanings, or one word that it could be, again, the same sound when you hear it, but it's talking about two completely different things. So what animal is always ready to travel? Forgive my fast handwriting here. I'm like a doctor. So that's a joke for you. I write like a doctor. So what animal is always ready to travel? See if anybody comes up with an answer for that. Miguel says, what about start reading even don't know how to pronounce some words? It's important to pronunciation before you start learning a language. Yes, if you'd like to do that, just get Frederick. Go down below this video. You can click on the link for Frederick. It will tell you more about that, but this is the world's first program that actually takes you through the pronunciation of the language step by step. All right. So bird, that's your answer. Why? Why is a bird an animal that's always ready to travel? Various. All right. Dribbles, I grasped English from the English, not with using my native language. Trust me, guys, our teacher has the best tips. Yes, the point is like you will. Sometimes it takes. I want to give this example because I know a lot of people struggle with this. So the traditional way that people learn languages is like, it's kind of like junk food. So junk food means it's like, ooh, I want to eat some candy or some chips or something, but then I feel bad afterwards, or maybe I wish I had not eaten that. And so that's kind of like learning through a translation. So if I give you a translation of something, like here's the Japanese word and here's the English word over here, I get the translation. It's the fastest way to get that translation. Okay, the fastest way to learn something is to get a translation. Unfortunately, when I get into a conversation, then I'm trying to think about that translation again. So the native way of doing this is we get one example, then another example, another example, another example, and maybe on the first example you don't quite understand something. That's okay. If you watch young kids listening to teachers or parents, a lot of them, they don't understand everything that they're being told. A lot of them do not. But after you get many, many examples, it might be like the third or the fourth example when you're like, I got it. Now I got it. Okay? So I've given examples before, like if I draw something, here's a picture of something and I'm trying to teach you a native alien language. And I don't want to use your language to do that. So I give you a flashcard and I say this is like ma. What am I talking about? Now you might think like, oh, that means flower, or it could mean, I don't know, it could mean life. It could be talking about the color of that thing. You don't really know. So the next example, maybe I give you like, I don't know, a different, I don't know, looking thing like that. And you're like, ooh, like, okay, now maybe we're not talking about like just the leaves or life or something interesting like that. I'm actually talking about, you know. So if I say ma, then you probably mean I mean flower. You probably think, okay? So my job is to give you enough examples to really help you understand something. This is why in Frederick we actually do this. So most programs, it will give you a single flashcard or a single image for something, but often, especially for a more like difficult word, it makes it more hard to understand. But it makes it harder to understand. But in this case, it's like, okay, we see many examples. So you get 4 different examples for all of the vocabulary in the app. So if we're teaching you something, you're learning it, the whole point is to learn it in English, you can just scroll through the different images of that and it will help you understand that. Okay? So that's how we do this. The point is always to be learning it in English. All right, shout out to you, the camel. So the camel has a suitcase on him. Turtles. The animal has the elephant. It's always ready with its trunk. Very good. That's the answer. All right, Mari knows the answer. That is the correct answer. So make sure everybody understands why this is. So the joke is, or the riddle, what animal is always ready to travel? The answer is the elephant, all right, for the purposes of this joke. So I'm going to draw, I drew an elephant before. I'll try to draw, it's pretty good elephant. It's kind of an elephant. All right, so why? Why is an elephant always ready to travel? This nose, the nose of the elephant is called a trunk. And a trunk is also the same word for like a box that you travel with, a trunk. All right, so most people do not travel with these anymore, so it's an interesting kind of older thing. You will not see, people taking a trunk like on the airplane with them. Most people don't travel with that anymore. But when people were on the Titanic or like a big steamboat, you were traveling for a long time, people would have a trunk with all of their information in it. Okay? So an elephant is always ready to travel because he always has his trunk with him. Okay? And so now you will probably not forget that example. And that's because instead of just saying like, "Ooh, this is a trunk," you will forget that. That's just giving you a definition. Or even worse, if I just give you a translation of that. All right? But now you're like, "Oh, an elephant always has a trunk." Yes, birds could also like travel or whatever, but any animal that can move can travel. But an elephant, only the elephant has a trunk. Now remember another thing, if we could make a joke about it. Here's a tree. This is also the trunk. This is the trunk of the tree. Your body, this is the trunk of your body. Okay? It's the same word, but different meaning. Okay? That's how you learn like a native. Pretty cool, right? So the point is to help you understand like a native, build your network in your mind. This is what we do in Fluent for Life. All right. All right, now I'm going to have to get out of here in just a moment, so let's see if we have any final questions. But yes, Mari does get the candy. I wish I had a prize. He could give you a prize over here. But the prize is the knowledge itself. Very good. And the good feeling that you get from having the answer. All right, let's see. Congo America TV says, "You are one of the best online teachers. Your explanations are very clear." Glad to hear it. Good morning, sir. All right, look at that. 97 minutes. Almost got 100 minutes in here. You guys making me lose my voice. Let me get my delicious natural spring water. Ooh, I always lose my voice. If you go back and watch the beginning of the video, my voice is like nice and clear. What is the meaning of kudo in the Japanese? Kudo? Kudo? I don't know what that means. Kudo? That might be a word. Kudo? Kudo. Where did you hear that? What is the context of that word? I don't know. I can't read that. That looks like some Chinese though. But we have something, we have something similar if you want to have like or I'm not going to write this. I'm not going to I can't even write English well. So I can take my time. Let's see here. Actually, I wanted to get to the point where I can write sloppy Japanese. So most people, when they're trying to learn a language, they really try to write it well. They're like, "Ooh, let me get every stroke looking perfect." But when Japanese people actually write, it's like some very, very hard to see stuff. But that's my goal. This is my goal to get here. And this is actually the same thing with learning English. People want to. They want to get here, but you got to go through this part first, okay? So spend your time, get your naturally varied review, learn like a native, and that's how you become a fluent speaker. So if you're looking for books, the best book for you is the thing that's really going to help you understand like a native. That's really the whole point. That's my whole message. If you learn English like a native, you will learn to speak like natives do. It's that simple. All right. Talk to him. You are not a Japanese teacher. Yes. So yes, I'm not a Japanese teacher. All right. So this live show is so long. You're very good. It's going too long. Yes, and I don't know if that's not Chinese either. There might be a word kudo in Japanese, but I've not heard that. I don't know. Maybe there is. Oh, I don't know. That's too long for that anyway. That's interesting. I don't know. I'll let you two continue that conversation with Google or look around on YouTube. But that will do it for me. I don't want to lose my voice anymore, but hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand now. If you're looking for specific books that can help you, that's the thing that can help you. Okay, so don't try to read a big novel. You want something that's going to help you focus on particular things and let you review that in different ways. Okay, this is the same way you got fluent in your native language, and it is the same way you get fluent in English. Have a fantastic day. If you'd like to learn more, especially about Frederick and Fluent for Life, you can click on the links in the description of this video. That's how we do help people speak more fluently in the next 30 days or less. Really, we just apply all this to helping people learn particular vocabulary and grammar, pronunciation, that kind of thing. But that's how we help people get fluent. Have a fantastic day again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.